Welcome to today's episode of the OrthoSpine Hub podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys and insights of leaders in the orthopedic and medical device industries and the companies within those markets. Today, we're thrilled to have Remco Maljers with us. Remco's career spans over 2 decades in the medical device sector, with a particular focus on spinal implants and regenerative technology. Let's explore his remarkable journey, achievements, and insights into the orthopedic market. Welcome, Remco. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you in your podcast today.
Fantastic. So, Remco, look, let's jump right in. Remco, can you start by just giving us an overview of your career and how you initially ventured into the medical device and orthopedic market?
Sure, I can. My adventure in orthopedics actually started very early. It must have been in my early teens. My dad's an orthopedic surgeon. My mom is an orthopedic scrub nurse. So when I was growing up after dinner, when my dad was looking at surgical videos to prepare for his next day complex cases, I already got my initial interest out. And I think I must have been 13 that I was taken for the first time to a Congress trip with my mom and dad to Vienna at the time. So many years later, I started my career as a rep at RX Medical, a distribution company for mostly large joint orthopedics in the Netherlands. A job that I kept for about 4 years. Then in the early 2000s, back in 2002, I started in my first international role with Medtronic. Timing was very interesting. This was just 3 weeks after my oldest daughter was born. So you can imagine that the constant travel wasn't always easy on the family.
Yeah, I bet.
But Medtronic was a great learning school, and it marked also the beginning of a long international career. And I'm now long enough in the job that nowadays my wife is asking me when I will travel again when I'm at home for too long.
Yeah.
Well, a few years after that, when my boss at the time became the president of Right Medical Europe, I joined him there, and I landed my first P&L responsible role as the director for Central and Eastern Europe. Within this tenure, I stayed there for 7 years. I grew through various roles and left the company at some point as the vice president for Northern Europe, where I managed the entities in the UK, in Belgium, and the Netherlands. Afterwards, I had 2 stints in 2 startup companies as the vice president of global sales. And in these roles, I really enjoyed because of the global scope. And it was also my first professional experience in Asia and Latin America. Working in these one-product companies in the early stages was also a great experience. At one point, you're negotiating distribution contract, and another point, you're assisting at first surgery. So those were really interesting times. Then after that, I worked for 4 years at NuVasive, which was at the time the fastest growing spine company in the world. And there I had the pleasure to work under the leadership of Greg Lucier, who grew the company to become a billion-dollar company. Greg is a very inspiring leader, and my wife and I were lucky enough to spend 2 trips to Mexico with him as part of the Chairman's Club Award incentive. The last 2 years at NuVasive, I was based in Singapore. So the whole family relocated, kids went to international schools. And I was the vice president for the emerging markets within Southeast Asia and EMEA. And there I built a phenomenal team of young and entrepreneurial business leaders. And together we led the fastest growing business within the company. Then a very interesting time, we went into the global pandemic. And right at the time when the whole world was going into lockdowns, I started as the VP of emerging markets at Orthofix. And my task was to expand its global footprint, which you can imagine was challenging because flying was not always very easy. Well, with the global network I built over the past 20 years, I managed to build up a team of best-in-class distributors with a primary focus on Latin America, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. And within that time, I'm particularly proud of the achievements we made within the United Arab Emirates and in Chile, where we became the number 2 in the market within 3 years. And mind you, on a global scale, Orthofix is only number 8 in the market.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in a
Fantastic.
nutshell my career
Yeah.
from my teens until today.
Yeah. And Remco, look, just to chuck an extra question in here, having kind of just gone through that, obviously you and your family, very well traveled, got a very good international background from there. Look, obviously they're very different from it, but where's your favorite places for either business or favorite places to go with the family and relax?
Favorite place for relax it is in Asia, and I would probably pick Thailand. For business, I've basically enjoyed working in the diversity. I love the Latin American part of the world. I love Asia as well. There's great things about Europe, and for me, it's all about doing a bit of all those cultures at the same time.
Fantastic. Perfect. So Remco, to continue talking about your background and your career, look, you've had some significant achievements and growth. What skills or expertise do you believe were instrumental to your success?
Well, besides obviously an in-depth knowledge of the global spine and orthopedic markets, what comes to mind first is my level of cultural awareness and understanding that I've built up over the years. And the best compliment I've received throughout my career came actually from a Polish partner who told me I'm more Polish than he is. Meaning I understand the local habits very well.
Yeah.
I've always loved to travel privately before I made it part of my daily routine, and I'm embracing the opportunity to interact with new and different cultures, as I mentioned before. And this proved especially to be very valuable when I managed a team of Asians in Singapore.
Yep.
Then, throughout the past 20 years, I've managed basically the entire globe geographically, with the exception of the United States and Japan. And this has also given me a very clear understanding of the regulatory landscapes, the strategic importance of markets, and the market opportunities in the various countries.
Yeah, fantastic. And then, look, throughout your career, you've had some notable milestones. Could you discuss a few of the achievements or moments that you're particularly proud of?
I would choose a campaign in Australia that led to the reimbursement code for an annular closure device for the treatment of herniated discs. And I choose this because we had all odds against us. One of the board members in the company I worked for was from a corporate strategic who didn't believe we would succeed in Australia. But I truly believed in the positive outcome and went against his advice, which was kind of putting my career on the line at the time. We didn't only needed to prove the medical superiority at a time that our randomized clinical trial wasn't even published yet, but we also needed to demonstrate that it was a cost-effective method, despite the fact that we increased the cost of the initial surgery. And then it proved that targeting the right surgeon audience and lobbying without manipulating proved to be a path to success.
Fantastic, fantastic. And look, me and you, we've known each other for a long time, and obviously we've had these conversations in the past, and kind of the impact that certain people can have on your life and your career. So for you, as far as mentors or role models playing a critical role in that path, can you talk about any individuals who have influenced your career choices and provided guidance for you?
Oh, most definitely. That has to be Hans Ekhoff. I met Hans during my mom's 40th birthday, and many times when he came to see my dad selling his hips and knees after his outpatients clinic. Hans was the owner of RX Medical in the Netherlands, and he later became the CEO of Acromed in the United States, which was then subsequently sold to become the Puy Spine. He's the most inspirational business leader I've met throughout my career. With a phenomenal track record of creating shareholder value by solving complex medical problems. Improving patients' lives is what kept him inspired and motivated throughout his life. Hans invited me to work at his company during my summers and days off when I was a teenager. I was preparing shipments, cleaning warehouse floors, and later when I had my driver's license, I was driving the surgical sets to the hospitals throughout the country. I was
Fantastic.
so impressed by their company culture that I set on my mind to work for him after I would finish university, and exactly that's what I've done.
Mhm.
An anecdote that comes to mind is that at one point he asked me to clean his car when he noticed from his office that I wasn't doing it in the way he wanted me to do it. So he came out and showed me how to clean a car with circular movements. This made such a big impression on me that a big business leader took time of his busy day to show me, a 14-year-old boy, how to clean a car. And that moment really made a big impression on me. So later on, when I had to choose a university, I didn't discuss with my parents, but I asked him what is the kind of direction I would need to come and work for him later on.
Yeah.
And his advice then was to choose a broad option, suggested international management, and that's exactly what I did. We kept this relationship throughout my entire career. Every single job offer or career question, or at times even more personal topics, I discussed those all with him until he sadly passed away almost a year and a half ago. Hans is very likely the most influential person throughout my personal and professional life.
Fantastic, and it's lovely to hear that. And I'm sure kind of Hans really helped shape you into the sales leader that you have become over the years. And obviously, you've led some very successful sales campaigns and initiatives of the teams themselves. Can you share any examples of a particular successful one and what factors contributed to that success?
So I can choose between quite a few successful ones, but there's one that was successful, but also a lot of fun to do. So we're going back to my time at Medtronic earlier on in my career, which was the relaunch of the TSRH 3D pedicle screw system. The TSRH system is a side-loading system in a market that is dominated by top-loading systems. During that time, I had the pleasure and honor to work with Pete Simonson, who is the inventor of the system, and he's also the best motivational speaker and sales rep I've worked with throughout those years. Our sales teams around the world, however, they didn't believe in side-loading systems, so they were very reluctant to bring us to see their key surgeon customers. So instead, we asked them to schedule meetings with surgeons in their territory where they never sold a dime in the past.
Right.
And together with Pete, in a 2-3 year time frame, we traveled 23 countries, and we increased that business from $70,000 in the beginning to $8 million at the time I left Medtronic. So I can still remember the sales pitch we had. It works from every direction, every angle, every height. Duh, that's what we needed. That's what we used to tell the salespeople. So that's the one that is successful and fun at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And look, it obviously worked very well. It's a fantastic result for the company. I mean, building and maintaining strong relationships with key customers and clients is crucial. We all know that in this market. And I think kind of reflecting back on what you said about when you joined OrthoFix in such a challenging time. And kind of still being able to build out that business. So how do you approach this aspect of the role?
There's a tip I received from my first commercial director back in the RX Medical days, and it's a tip I give to every single one who works in my teams. That is, never make a promise you can't keep, and always keep your promises. It sounds very simple, but if you live by this rule, you're better than the rest. It's sad, but very true. Business is all about follow up and follow through. Then, throughout my career, I worked mostly with independent distribution companies, which are technically our customers. I've always treated them, though, as part of our own team and included them in all the internal communications and events. And it doesn't only strengthen the relationship, it also strengthens the level of mutual trust that you have together. And the way how I interpret that is that when I am at a distribution company, I'm the representative of the company I work for, that I hold the business card from. However, once I'm in my own headquarters, I see myself as the distributor's ambassador. Most of these
Right.
distribution companies, they have a very small number of contacts within the company they work
Mm-hmm.
with. So they highly rely on you when it comes to looking after their needs. So that's why I
Yeah.
see myself as their ambassador as soon as I'm in my own headquarters.
Fantastic. It's a great way to kind of look at it from there. So, look, obviously, you've done very successful. You've been in this industry for a number of years. And obviously, you'll have seen the ups and downs of the industry, the ever evolving, continuous market that it is. So, look, what I'd like to discuss now is kind of where you see the market going. So can you discuss any specific areas within the sector that are expanding rapidly, or you see increased demand coming through?
Sure. There's a lot of media attention these days about the growing influence of artificial intelligence, right, within our industry.
Yes. Yeah.
But I would like to focus my answer more to regional opportunities. So
Okay.
Art Collins, the former chairman of Medtronic, he already mentioned it very early on in the 2000s that the emerging markets represent the biggest market growth opportunity. And Medtronic very early on already adopted that into its corporate structure, corporate strategy.
Yeah.
The United States is the largest, but also the most saturated market globally. And as you know, the opportunity in Europe is no longer what it has been since the implementation of EU MDR. Therefore, regions such as Southeast Asia and Latin America, in my opinion, represent the best growth scenarios for the next few years. And just to give you one example, the spine market in Mexico today is 105 million US dollars, but is expected to grow to 130 million dollars by 2030, which, mind you, is only 6 years from today.
Yeah,
absolutely. And these percentages of market growth, they're difficult to find in the more established markets where prices are driving down the market year over year.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, you touched upon it then, and it has been kind of a big challenge for everyone in the market with kind of MDR. So kind of facing challenges, look, in this market is always inevitable to any of the industries. But what are some of the key challenges, obstacles faced by companies in the orthopedic sector, and how are these being addressed right now?
I think you just mentioned the biggest challenge that we have today, the implementation of EU MDR in Europe. Patients in Europe have always had very early access to new technologies, unlike in the United States, for example, with the long pathway to market.
Yeah.
Access to the European market now seems to become more complicated and more expensive because MDR requires more clinical data than the FDA does in the United States. And the problem for Europe is that the margins that the industry are making in Europe are very far from those in the United States. And that causes companies to think twice before deciding to come to Europe. Many have already left Europe or went belly up. And therefore, patients' access will be seriously impacted. Switzerland has had the best response to Brussels, in my opinion, by abandoning CE mark altogether for the Swiss market and replacing it by US FDA approvals. And while I don't believe that individual EU member states can take the same measure, which is very unfortunate, but it's a good sign that other markets around us are walking away from Brussels when it comes to access to medical devices.
Yeah, and the UK market is doing something similar as well. Obviously, not across all products, but certain industries, certain products doing the same thing, and they're classing it as if it's got FDA, then it can go through and doesn't have to go through this long new process of MDR. Which obviously its challenges come from kind of there isn't enough companies around at the moment that can go through it and can do it from that side, but it's not ready. On there. And it's such a shame because I remember myself, like if I go back to kind of the beginning of when I first started in orthopedic and spine, which is more than a decade ago there was such innovation still at that point in the market in places like France and Germany. There was lots of companies that were still around, American companies still wanting to come over here. I remember starting a number of US businesses for the first time in Europe, and it's just not there anymore, which is such a
No.
shame. And the innovation that kind of, especially that little small area in France and stuff back in the day for spine, it was fantastic. But kind of, it's such a shame that Europe's going through this at the moment.
Which is another challenge that we're facing. If you look at the market, you mentioned France. New Vasif, where I worked for 4 years, has decided not to go into France. They were at that point the number 3. Today, the number 2 market in the country, and they don't go to France because of the low pricing. It's just not affordable to sell your products there, and that's, I think, a European trend that prices are being driven down year over year.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, Remco, let's go through kind of more something on a personal and mindset level. Obviously, you mentioned earlier on in kind of the episode that you had your eldest child and returned back to work within 3 weeks, traveling globally from that side. Obviously, kind of over the years, I'm sure that's changed. And look, there's a big influence and a big kind of looking at people's mental health and a healthy work-life balance and how essential it is for such a demanding career that the orthopedic market is. For yourself, how do you prioritize self-care and ensure a balance amidst the pressure of some seriously high-pressure roles that you've been in?
I think the most important thing to look at there, especially with the long hours we all put in our jobs, is to make sure that you're in a job that you like. Sounds very simple. System is most important to look after. It's like with everything you do in life, the energy it brings should outweigh the energy it takes. That goes for your professional life, goes for your personal life as well. Then a little bit more detail. I think looking after a healthy diet is also very important. International business usually comes with a lot of whining and dining, and over the past few years, I've gained quite some weight, which is a downside of the job, especially in Latin America, where you have big steak lunches and then big steak dinners at the same day. It's posing a problem at some point. So I now try to avoid anything that's deep fried. I never ate desserts in life in the first place. But since last year, I also picked up a gym in my daily routine. So typically every morning between 6 and 7, I'm in the gym, which brought me back to my ideal weight. But what I didn't expect before, it also creates a lot of mental energy. So for me, an hour in the gym is better spent than an hour extra in bed.
100%. And it's something that I've really been getting into a lot since the beginning of this year. And it becomes a little bit addictive last couple of weeks. For me, my weights have been going up and up and up. And it's just like, whoa, it's that whole mindset change that you can have when you're doing things. It's like, wow, really pushing.
I was, to give you an example, I was in the gym at 6:30 on Christmas Day.
Wow, that's probably a little bit more dedicated than where I am right now.
Exactly.
I'm enjoying my journey so far. Fantastic. So look, Remco, thank you so much for being on show today. Obviously, I like to end all our podcasts with kind of one question that we ask to all our guests, and it's reflecting on your journey. If you could offer any advice to your 21-year-old self, what would it be?
That's a very fun question. Let me think about that one. When I was 21, I had a very clear target and ambition, which was to work in this orthopedic industry. And I actually had that ambition already for a few years, right? So looking back at my 21-year-old self with the life experience from today, I would recommend myself to work more on setting the right priorities in life. And this is what we mentioned earlier, maintaining a healthy diet, looking after your weight and so on. And also success is not just defined by our professional career, which you kind of believe when you're in your early 20s, right? But it's also being a nice partner, an example father, and a good friend. That being said, though, like anyone else, I made many mistakes growing up, and I would not have liked to miss any one of those. So mistakes help you to become who you are today. So maybe I wouldn't give advice to my 21-year-old self. However, I give quite some advice to a 21-year-old because my oldest daughter is now 21, studying and living in Seoul, Korea. And obviously studying international business as well. So her and I speak a lot as well. And I see a lot of her back. I see a lot of myself back into her as well. So I kind of give those advice on a regular basis.
Fantastic.
For a 21-year-old, it is work hard and play hard.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. So look, Remco, look, thank you again for coming and joining us on today's show. Obviously, it's been an absolute pleasure learning all about your background and going through things in more detail with you. And obviously, all that's left for me to say is hopefully, Remco, we'll speak again soon and maybe even bring you back on the show at some point in the near future.
Super. Well, Richard, thanks for the opportunity to be part of your podcast. And it's always good to connect to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.